Welcome to, I don't know what incarnation of the podcast this is. This is a fun new experiment, a sort of trial vlog. I think what Pablo and I are trying to accomplish is something new under the sun and Titanic. Is that a good way to put it?
New under the iceberg might have made more sense given that there wasn't much sun in the whole Titanic scenario.
They had some sunny days on board, though, right?
Yeah, well, famously the
Yeah.
flying scene. Well, in the film anyway.
We're just gonna pretend that was real. We recently found ourselves in Bergen, Norway. Pablo, tell everybody why we were both in Bergen, Norway.
I actually am not quite sure how that happened. Someone asked me this the other day. They were like, were you in Norway? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, why? And I just paused and was like, yeah, good question, actually. You just texted me because you were planning to go there, because you were excited about going there. I'm in the UK, therefore I am quite close to Norway.
Yeah, I'm very jealous. This is why I'm trying to become a British citizen because you can fly anywhere you want to in Europe for like what is it? An hour and a half? Was it an hour and a half flight?
It was about an hour and a half to Bergen.
So I texted you or I voice noted you and asked you to come to Norway. You did sort of say, as anyone would, are you sure you want me to come on your family vacation?
Yeah, that was the thing, is that because I think you had told me a bit about the lead up to it and you had explained, how this was a family holiday. So when you invited me, I was like, oh no. And see, maybe this is another kind of cultural difference with our countries, because in the UK, we're incredibly polite, but we're the kind of people that might be like, oh, we should do this, and then never follow it up because we're just too awkward. Like, British people are too awkward. Whereas I think in America, you're a lot more kind of bombastic and a bit more sort of on the nose. So when you said it, I was like, I know she's American, so maybe I should take this more seriously. But
You know this about me, and probably a lot of my listeners who've gotten to know me a little bit know this about me. I don't say things I don't mean. So if I never wanted you to come to Norway, I would have never asked you to come to Norway.
the thing that clinched it for me was when you were voice noting me, and I said, listen, I have to check. Let me speak to my partner. Let me check flights. Let me see. Not really thinking much of it. And then you voiced me over and like, yeah, sure. No pressure, no pressure. And then I think you turned to John and was like, John, right, there's no pressure. And he was like, well, there's a little bit of pressure from me.
Yeah.
And that was what sealed the deal for me, because I was like, well, if he didn't want me to come, then he just wouldn't have said anything.
John is my husband, in case people don't know.
Oh, sorry.
He voiced what my whole family was trying to voice, which is, no, actually there is some pressure because we're trying to see you because you don't live in the United States anymore. I thought it was just an amazing opportunity to get to see you because you do live full time back in the UK for now. And we're unfortunately stuck in the United States. And my family and I, we just travel when we can. It's just a big priority for us. And so Norway was just on the docket for this year, and we found really great flights. And I just thought it would be a great opportunity to get to hang with you. And then what evolved from that, and we're very happy you came at an amazing time, but what evolved from that was this idea that we would try to find Titanic in Bergen, Norway. So 5 days, like 4 full days. Just one caveat to this entire thing, and Pablo knows what I'm about to say, which is we are aware that there are a couple of Titanic graves very near Bergen. We are aware of this. There are 2 Norwegian passengers that are buried close to Bergen. When we decided to do this vlogging project, we decided that we would not take that low of hanging fruit. We decided that we had to find it organically. And our mission was, can we find Titanic in Bergen? I credit you though, because you've always had this theory. For the idea, you've always had this theory that you can find Titanic anywhere. And it's sort of like the tangential Titanic. We always use that phrase, right? But this is kind of a working theory that you've had for a long time, in a way.
Yeah, I think it's part of we've spoken before, it's part of my interest with Titanic. Obviously, Titanic is such a huge subject. Even if people think it's really niche, it's so vast that you can't possibly know about everything to do with Titanic. So once you get into Titanic, or at least this is what has happened to me, and I know also to you, is that you get into it and you're like, right, I've got to consume absolutely everything about Titanic. Every book, every show, every podcast, every film, absolutely everything related, every museum. And then you kind of figure out that there are bits of it that you find slightly more interesting than other bits. And it's not just a ship that sank, obviously. There is a whole host of stuff that goes with it. And one of the things that has always interested me has been why it interests other people. And I know I've spoken to you about this, but I've spoken to a lot of other people as well, is that why that ship, because there have been so many other ships that sank, so many other ships with loss of life, and it's nowhere near the greatest loss of life at sea. Even in peacetime history, it's nowhere near. So, what is it about Titanic that fascinates people so much that it, 100+ years later, it is, producing over 100 touring exhibitions around the world at the same time? So that is what has always fascinated me about Titanic. Once I kind of got into it, along with kind of the political stuff and the artifact stuff and all that kind of thing. But it strikes me that there is, wherever you go, there is some relation to Titanic, because it's spread its kind of brand so far and embedded itself so deeply that I think it's impossible to escape. And so I want to know if you can go to somewhere completely random like Bergen. Well, I mean, Bergen's not random, but somewhere completely tangential.
Nobody would ever say, oh, you're interested in any level of Titanic tourism, go to Norway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, if you wanted like legit Titanic, you really could only go to the UK and Ireland. I mean, yeah, you can go to America, but in terms of like authentic Halifax, maybe, but like in terms of like authentic Titanic places, they're pretty much all on the islands of the United Kingdom and Ireland. You have the pier in New York and things, but if someone said to me, well, someone actually did just last week, they were like, if I was going to go somewhere to get like the fullest Titanic experience, like, which one should I go to, which museum, which place? And I was like, Belfast. Like, that is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, to use an American phrase, for like Titanic. That's where you're going to get the biggest amount of Titanic-based stuff. I would certainly not have said to them, go to Bergen and find
So like a second city in Norway is not where you would ever imagine finding much Titanic-related stuff. So we kind of took that theory that you have and we wanted to run with it and just see if we could find it. But it had to be an organic process. It worked into what we were already doing. So we still had this whole other trip going on that had nothing to do with Titanic. I mean, my kids were there and they're Titanic the hell out. So they had no interest, although we'll talk about it, but my daughter does like being on camera. So we utilized her a little bit. This was a vacation. So we were going to museums, we were eating out, we were having fun, like with things that have no relation to Titanic whatsoever. And so we'll talk about it, but a lot of the clips we have to share, a lot of the video we have to share is just kind of random things that we stumbled upon.
They do get kind of increasingly desperate as well, as we think that there are definitely moments. I was looking back at them before and I was like, wow, I was really clutching at straws in that one. Like,
we do get desperate because if we're not doing the two graves that are near Bergen, and I will include that grave info, in notes for the video. But if we're not including those, then we're starting from absolutely nothing. So we started from nothing upon arrival. One thing we did is we walked the harbor and we tried to salvage what we could Titanic related. So you did find a warship that you read a little bit of history about.
Yeah, so I found a German warship. So I spotted the ship, spotted the flag, and did some research on it, and discovered that this was the largest warship in the German Navy at the moment. So it's only 7,200 tons, which is not huge, even compared to Titanic, and Titanic is not huge compared to today. But in the German Navy, see, ships are smaller and have to be more agile and all the rest of it. But it is the largest warship still in the German Navy. That was the, I'm going to absolutely stumble the hell out of this, but it's, I believe you pronounce it the Nordenhain Westfalen. So they do a lot of like long deployments and things like that. So I thought, I mean, that was in itself kind of interesting to see. I don't know, I couldn't figure out why it was there. I guess maybe that's classified. There are obviously a whole ton of private boats and ships and all that kind of stuff around. We did see a couple of really big cruise ships. None of them were particularly notable though, because we did Google them and there wasn't any that were sort of there were some big ones, but there wasn't anything kind of particularly.
Which is in itself kind of a thing to mention though, because Titanic would be like dwarfed by modern cruise ships, but they're so huge, and when they let their passengers out in Bergen, it is just a madhouse. One of the day that you went kayaking, that you weren't with us, kind of going around during the day, must have been, if so, Tuesday. It must be a huge cruise ship day. There just were so many people unloading from these cruise ships. It's wild. But yeah, so that's kind of the view you get in the harbor. We did see right in front of the buildings of Bergen. I did walk a gangplank at one point to try to give us some Titanic content.
Well, there were a couple of kind of Titanic adjacent ships, like they kind of look like I mean, when I say that, I basically mean they had like black and red.
There was one that was giving kind of nomadic vibes. I think
Yeah,
you have
that's
a video
probably.
of it. I think it was my 9-year-old daughter who pointed that one out, and I've really trained her up well when she points to a ship, and she's like, "That's giving me nomadic vibes." I don't know. The deck's looking a little cluttered, even with that one.
I think what it was that we were walking down that hill, and as you walked down the hill into the kind of the seafront, you kind of slowly saw as like the sky and the sea kind of met, and so the ships kind of slowly came into your sort of eye line, and so you did kind of get that sense of, you know, a revealing of a really beautiful ship. I think that's partly what contributed to the evoking that sense of, you know, when you see the films of Titanic that reveal her in all her kind of glory. I think that's perhaps where that came from.
And Bergen is sort of just composed that way. I mean, Bergen is really a layered city. It's like up on, you know, it's like Floyen is the mountain that's right in the middle of town, but all of the cobblestone streets are layered and tiered and like all going upward. So it's like walking there is quite a workout. We definitely like, you know, I think I left with like a really great looking butt. You know what I mean? Like I think
I actually weighed myself when I got back at the gym because I was really nervous. Because I was in the Isle of Wight for a week before I literally came back from the Isle of Wight.
Holidays, don't ever. One time you did, I don't care who hears this. One time you did message me because I told, this was months ago, we were about to go on like a beach trip or something like here locally in North Carolina. And I messaged you, oh, like I can't record these days or head to the beach for a few days. And you did send me a message that said, quote, gosh, you're always on holiday. You need to like think this through. Like when do you guys work? Like something like that. So don't.
The thing is, though, is that I often have to work when I'm on holiday. I wrote an opinion piece for a newspaper I work with on a kayak in a fjord in outside Bergen.
I'm just saying, don't ever, no commentary on the stacked vacations, okay?
No, that's fair. That's fair. But I came from, so I was in the Isle of Wight for a week, and then I had about 18 hours back in Manchester before I came out to Norway. And so I was so conscious, I was like, oh my God, 2 weeks basically of holiday. I am going to have put on so much. I actually lost weight. I came back and I was over the moon. I was like, I can go back to Norway again, if that's what it takes.
I came back feeling great. And as you saw, I was eating anything and everything that I wanted to eat. But I was closing the rings on my watch at like 3:00 in the afternoon. I think at one point it clocked like 60 flights of stairs because everything there is just like vertical up. I wasn't even doing like my regular workouts I do throughout the week. And I think I came back like a couple of pounds lighter. Bergen's a beautiful city. But what I was going to say is like, probably people don't care about our weight that much. I don't
I know, I just realised there was like a whole tangent about our... And just to let you know, I also went to the gym this morning at 7 a.m, just in case anyone's wondering about our gym routine.
Today's actually my rest day, if anybody's arm day yesterday, and I'm really sore. So just so if anyone's curious, like we're up on it. We're working on it. Like working on our Fergalicious.
This is just like, our listeners are just like...
I just lost a bunch. But if you stayed with us, Bergen is, you get like the vista, you get that viewpoint of like the harbor view. You can either be like looking right out at it or down on it, and it's beautiful. Like you could see where the unfurling of like a flag or like the debuting of a new ship would be very dramatic in a place like that. And the views that you get of the ships in the harbor are very reminiscent of like the opening scene in James Cameron's Titanic, for example, like the waving. And, you know, we saw a couple of cruise ships like head out, and it definitely had that vibe. And so you know, Bergen is a ship town. It's a maritime town. So I think that's connection number one, but that's obviously not enough to do anything. I mean, we stumbled upon an anchor. We have, you know, there's so much maritime history just in that harbor, but I mean, we weren't interested in Norwegian history. We were trying to find Titanic. So, I mean, we were interested in Norwegian history. We did a lot of other things, but for this video, that's not what we were trying to do.
No, and we did exhaust pretty much everything. So you'll probably see a lot of talk of tangential. You know, we took pictures of like chandeliers that we were just like, that kind of gives. How's it fare up?
First class dining saloon. I'm thinking rattling when the ship goes down.
Oh my god, yeah, that.
We should go down when we were really grasping for straws. We should go down that.
Yeah, it got pretty desperate. So there was the chandelier. There was the. Do you remember we walked past that restaurant that your kids were like not sure whether they wanted to go into it, and we were like, should we not? And eventually we decided not to. And then as we walked past, I was like, oh, that's so annoying. Look how they've laid their napkins, and their napkins were laid out on the table the same way they laid them out on Titanic.
Anybody, like nobody, unless they were at like the level of Titanic illness like we have, would even fucking care about saying that, you know? Like, so we were.
I mean, that was definitely a low moment for sure.
Go through our low moments first. We did catch a building at Bergen that was circa 1912.
Does this not say 1912? Right there.
Oh, get a video.
I am. Well, actually, I don't know if it was built. I think it was rebuilt in 1912 because the dates on it are... The dates are 1480, 1712, and 1912. So it must have been rebuilt in 1912.
That's the thing I was saying about Bergen, like the iconic row of like wooden buildings on the harbor there. Most of them are rebuilt because fires would just continually destroy these. Apparently, when they did like a big rebuild in the 16 or 1700s, they had a rule that nobody could have fire in any of the rooms except for one. And then there had to be like a fire watchman. And apparently they would have these wild parties in the harbor, but there had to be a designated fire person to make sure that like no drunk person lit the buildings on fire again. So it's quite an interesting history there. But yeah, one of them was rebuilt in 1912. We went to the Bergen's Museum, which is incredible collection of like Middle Ages archaeological finds from all of these buildings in Bergen. So every time they would rebuild, you obviously end up with like these layers of soil and soot and things that have burned up. But in the process of restoring some of these buildings, they've done these archaeological digs. We saw a human skeleton, clothing, shoes, knives. Oh yeah, what did you see?
What's this giving you?
Portholes. We were really grasping at straws for this one too. We did see a map of the route, like early trade routes, and Southampton was there, so that was kind of cool. But you were filming knives or something? What were you doing?
So I have this, oh God, I mean, tangential really is the word of the day. So I used to live on a canal boat back in the day. And this one time, me and my friends went away for a weekend. We were making dinner, and I needed to cut something. And so I just randomly, I was like squeezing past this like really tight galley, and I just shouted like, "I need a knife! I need a knife! I need a knife!" And obviously no one got it apart from me.
I would have if I was there. But,
Yeah,
but
you would have got it.
you know me yet, yeah.
I managed to bring that in anytime I need a knife for anything, even if I'm just on my own, I think to myself. And then I saw in this museum some knives, and it triggered the same moment. So we did see some knives, again, talk of tangential, basically a knife, just because it's in the film. There was also, I think it was for the kids, there was like a trail that the kids would follow with mice, and one of the mice had a violin and was in a suit, and so was kind of giving, you know, Wallace Hartley vibes, kind of.
Which, shout out to museums for doing that, because it basically allows you to hand your children, as long as they can read and write, like a piece of paper, and they go on their own little journey at the museum, and then you actually have a few minutes to look at things. Going to that museum sort of lit our flame, like the pilot light of the oven of trying to like really make this happen. So I think then we kind of got into the groove with it.
Talking of violins, there was also that statue outside of, I think it was a memorial of a man playing a violin, and underneath was there's like a woman carrying a cross. I think it was a sort of maritime type memorial. Yes. I also was out for a run, and I saw a flower shop with roses outside. So there's that. I guess that doesn't count.
I don't think we got footage, but we did walk by a store, like a boutique that had like flowy dresses that were giving Rose vibes. There was one that was, I think I'm going to be a bridesmaid's dress. It was sort of that style. Same material, and if the colors on like the bust part were different, it basically would have been the jump dress. So I'm sad that we didn't get a footage.
But we did get footage of a shop called Norse Bunda, which had a very Helga style.
Yeah, I saw that in the
This one's looking like Helga.
Guys.
Fabrizio, no.
Yeah, there was definitely oh, you know what? Is Helga Norwegian? How do we miss this? This is why we have to when I'm not editing any of this out, we have to keep this in. Is Helga Norwegian?
I'm Googling it now. Helga Dahl was a character in James Cameron's film Titanic. She was a Norwegian third-class passenger aboard the RMS Titanic and the love interest of Fabrizio, which is... Yeah.
We found... We...
But she's... Is she real, though?
What do you mean? In our
Was
hearts?
she real?
No. Was she real as in... No, she's a fictional character.
Fictional character, but that actress is probably was quite angry when the final cut came out, because I think she had a
whole subplot that was
all right. So Helga,
well, that makes more sense. That's actually less tangential than
so we didn't even realize it, but when we passed by the storefront with those dresses, we found it. We found Helga.
we found Helga. We should let Fabrizio know we found Helga.
Also saw plenty of women that sort of looked like Helga, so that makes sense. I think, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so we found Helga, but we had not found Titanic. Let's go ahead and hit them with the scooter ride. Leaving dinner one evening in Bergen, where we really just went to one dinner, just the two of us, to get all of the Titanic out that we could, as not to drive John and my children too crazy for the entire trip. But we did end up more of like a 20 or 30 minute walk from where we were staying. And so we decided to get a scooter, but I didn't have the app on my phone, nor did I trust myself on a scooter in this situation, because I never scooter or bike in a city. I just have never done that. So I did hop on the back of Pablo's scooter. And you can probably do more justice to... I don't think that scooter was meant to get two people up those hills.
Definitely was not meant to get... But inevitably, it led to...
We were still really desperate. We did reenact some scenes.
We did. Basically, because we just saw some water. Oh no, I saw that rock, and I was like, that looked a bit like the bow of a ship. That was what triggered it.
We were hiking on Mount Floyen. That was the rock at the lake at Mount Floyen. And I think that John was a little surprised we actually did it because, and this is full disclosure on me, I'm a very clumsy person, incredibly clumsy. I'm very self-actualized about it, and I'm not the best at climbing on rocks and things. So I think John was genuinely worried for my physical safety or for your having to like fish me out of a lake. And so I think he's surprised that we actually did it, but I did get out on this rock and we did do the flying scene on a rock on the lake. And Mount originally we're going to get in a canoe. You're not a Bridget Jones person, but anyone who's a Bridget Jones's Diary person knows there is this iconic scene in the first film where Hugh Grant and Renee Zellweger are on a canoe, and Hugh Grant is drunk, I think, because they're on holiday, and he stands at the bow of the canoe and says, "I'm king of the world." And that was like one of the first times you get a movie reference within a movie from Titanic, because obviously Titanic is 97. I think Bridget Jones is like 2000 or 2001. And I always love to tell that story because it like James Cameron's Titanic is so pervasive that you're getting references in other films, which isn't very common for a film. I think the only ones that do that would be something like Titanic or like Jaws. I know you love Jaws. You know, like it has to be something that big to be referenced in another film. So we were going to do a canoe, but I was very concerned about my ability to stay in the canoe and row it properly. So like I was very concerned about any level of me being in the canoe. So we did the rock instead.
But there were some other, outside of that, there were a few other tangential pieces. I was on a run and I saw a memorial or statue of some sort, and it had a woman, it had a couple of guys underneath, and then it had a woman above. And it looked like at the beginning of the flying scene when Rose is like climbing up the bow. I'm on a run, so I'm not with LA, but don't you think this is kind of giving Rose at the bow? Hold on. Do you know what I mean? Like she's kind of pressed out. It's almost like she's about to put her arms up. That's where we're at. That's as good as it gets. I since learned that it's actually a whaling monument, and it was unveiled in the 60s to kind of commemorate the city's whaling history, which obviously in hindsight, not the vibe. But it did...
No, not a good vibe.
No, but it did have this kind of maritime sort of sense to it, and the female figure very kind of like upright and giving very kind of strong female lead character energy, a bit like Rose. So I saw that.
Well, we were trying everything. We went into a bookshop randomly that also ended up selling incense and witchcraft things, which I mean, really very on brand for me, but not necessarily Titanic on.
I did also go to another bookshop, and it was a fairly extensive bookshop, so I thought I was going to find something in there. I didn't have a whole ton of time, and obviously everything is in Norwegian, so I was struggling to exactly know where to look, you know, for maybe history books or something. I did find an unfortunate book about the British Empire, but...
what was the title of that one again?
A Legacy of Violence, the History of the British Empire. We have a lot of history to come to terms with.
So do we. Some of it's happening right now, but anyway, this is supposed to uplift people.
There was also a vintage shop that I went into, so this is probably the first real kind of thing, sort of. So I went into this huge vintage shop. It was absolutely, it was just, you could barely move. There was so much stuff, and it was just this tiny little path, and you sort of kind of followed this one-way system. And everything, I was hitting my head on everything. I was knocking everything over. It was so, like, you could barely move. And it had everything from, like, coasters to teapots to lamps. A lot of kind of Titanic-esque, you know, lamps and cups and plates. Like, very kind of that era. A lot of brass-type paraphernalia, you know, brass-fitted lamps, or a lot of brass hanging, you know, the kind of cages they put lamps in, those sort of, you know, those kind of things. So there's a lot of that. I thought this was the White Star Line flag. It's not. But this is like a nautical themed thing. And then I discovered they did have a series of vintage metal sort of poster signs. And they did have a couple of the original Titanic, not original, like copies of original Titanic posters from the original sailing. So that was probably the first real connection to Titanic. So I'm currently actually without LA, which is very disappointing because I have just seen the first proper sign.
How do you get it?
Which is right here in this antique shop.
What's that marking mean?
There you go.
Sure, but you can find out who made them.
Thank you.
I don't know if it super counts because it was just basically a printout of a poster.
And it sort of looked AI generated a little bit.
Well, then there was another one that was AI generated.
That's a different one.
So there was one, that was super dodgy, that was AI generated, which you'll see. I took a video of it, and it's got like 5 funnels, and it's like Titanic or something. And it says like the Queen of the Ocean, and it's very, the whole thing is very questionable. But it was there. There was also a map of New York there. And Brooklyn, which is where I was living when I lived in New York. But there was a New York map, which included, of course, the pier that that they would have arrived in, or actually the survivors did arrive into. There was that, which was sort of...
Ish. At this point, we were doing things like filming Lorelai in the street in her Titanic shirt.
We've manufactured this, but this is my daughter in Bergen in her Titanic shirt.
It didn't really seem like we were going to have any success.
No, and I got as desperate as I went into a shop to buy a Norwegian-made knitted jumper for my niece, and I went down a spiral staircase. I guess this doesn't count, right? Because this is just stairs, but it is like a staircase. And as you can see, the spiral staircase looks nothing. It's just a staircase. Which, to be honest, is what I used to say to people when I worked at Titanic Belfast and everyone would see the staircase. I'm like, it's just a staircase. But this really was just like a staircase. But I was, we were clutching. We were clutching.
So at this point, we have decided to really just film some things that put Titanic where we are. So, for example, we film us, the scooter. We also film ourselves jumping into the ocean.
Yes. Shouting.
John is just chastising us because he's like, you just need to jump in. Who cares what you say? He's like, why does it matter what line it is? We had a 10-minute debate about what line from the movie to shout while we're jumping into the ocean. And we eventually settled on I'm King of the World.
We're doing I'm the King of the World. Or I'm flying. Could be
I'm flying.
Well, actually, here, wait. All right. 1, 2.
Wait. Because I'm way further up to the edge than you.
Like he goes before me.
Just jump off at the same time. Use your eyeballs and jump at the same time.
When am I shouting though?
I'm King of the World.
When you're
like, as I start going.
as you jump.
This woman who was working there, like she overheard, and John apparently she had a very strange look on her face, and John apparently went over and asked her, like, does this happen a lot? Do you hear this kind of thing a lot? And she said, absolutely not. This is very strange. So I think we're used to being places where people wouldn't think that kind of thing is very strange, but I think it was very strange for her to see that. And at one point she did say to me, she did say it with a smile on her face, but at one point she did say to me, people died, So
yeah.
I had a real moment where I was like, what am I doing? Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Yeah.
I also thought the same. And it was very cold. That water was very cold.
That was part of this being relevant, is that the water was very cold, obviously.
Yeah. And it was black. Even though it was incredibly clean, the water was totally clean. But because it's not Mediterranean Sea, so you're not getting a kind of blue sky, sandy bottom, it was pretty much pitch black. Once you were in it, totally transparent, but looking down into it was pretty intimidating.
So it was relevant, but, I don't know that it's the classiest thing to be jumping off and shouting on, but we did it, and we can't not share it.
And talking of cold, we went to an ice bar.
There was a drink called the Iceberg.
There was a heart, which I forced you to do, a kind of draw me like one of your French girls.
Well, you know what they would have to do?
I want you to draw me.
Ice skates. No, they wouldn't.
Wearing this.
They like shoes that would get like
Wearing only this.
There were quite a lot of very sexual, kind of curvy women carved out of ice.
I was going to say, tell them carved out of ice, not just like hanging out with us.
Yeah, they weren't just some very. We took LA's two pre-teenage kids to
Area with these bosomy females. I mean, honestly, like John probably would have loved that. Unfortunately, that was not real. That would have been a lot more entertaining of an evening, but unfortunately, that's not real. There were some very like sexual ice sculptures going on.
Well, they were. I got videos of them, but they were very kind of, draw me like one of your French girls. There was a ice sketch of a violin. Again, we're giving kind of Wallace Hartley. And then we had a lot of fun because as soon as I got in there, for some reason my breath was showing a lot more than LA's was. So when I first started speaking, as I got in there, I was like, oh, is there anyone alive out there?
There's a boat, Jack. There's a boat, Jack.
I shouldn't be laughing at that, should I?
Why aren't they turning?
This is very niche. My mind first went to the behind the scenes clip. I don't know if you've seen this, you probably have, where they show how they superimposed the breath onto the characters because the water they were actually in was kind of warm, not cold enough to have a breath.
It was warm and everybody was peeing in it. So,
That bit's not really relevant to what we're talking about, but sure.
It's not. The history of the making of that movie is relevant to every minute of my life.
Yeah, that's fair. So there's like a behind the scenes thing where they basically got one or two people in like black cloaks and got them in a really cold room and then just got them to say the stuff. So they would say the words that the characters were saying. So they'd say, is there anyone alive out there, or iceberg right ahead, or whatever. And they would then just record the breath, and then they added that breath onto the characters later. So that was what triggered it in my mind. So then I was doing that, and then we had a lot of fun with recreating various moments of the film, including
an iconic deleted scene. And it's under 30 seconds.
Well, is it iconic, or is it really where it should be, which is deleted?
I think okay. James Cameron.
I love this film. I love this film, but I will say some of those deleted scenes are deleted for a reason.
Hey, Sonny, how about a little ice?
Yes, ma'am, I'll bring it on.
Let's put it this way. James Cameron edits himself well. He knows what needs to get cut. But I think of all of the deleted scenes, it's maybe one of the most, like, people reference it, like hardcore Titanic people reference this deleted scene.
We'll put the deleted scene.
Copyright, yeah.
Well, probably not, because they probably haven't copyrighted the delete. They probably didn't think anyone would do this, so they were. We need to copyright this deleted scene because two random people are going to copy it in Bergen, Norway in 2025, over 25 years after its release, which didn't actually get a release because it never was in a film, obviously.
Hey, Sonny, how about a little ice? Well, I'm quite proud of my theatrical performance, and I want everyone to give it. It's like on Instagram when the reel that goes around where someone stares in the camera and says like, well, my spouse is about to model their new outfit and you better give her attention and tell her she's cute. That's how I feel about this. You better give me attention and tell me I'm cute. So we had fun reenacting. Lorelai did lifeboats be seated according to class.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, these lifeboats be seated according to class.
She's an aspiring theatrical performer, so she's given me permission to be in this video, and I'm also her parent, so I get to decide the legal permission of her being in the video. So just in case we have any like legal dispute here, she's allowed to be in this video. What else? Yeah, we were really grasping.
You know what we didn't do, which given our insistence on talking about RMS Titanic Inc. at basically any opportunity, we didn't do like, how long can you keep your hand on the ice kind of thing, because that's their thing. They have the iceberg which you put your hand on to see if you can. We didn't do that.
Titanic Pigeon Forge used to have one until it fell on someone and broke their leg.
Sorry, I'm not laughing.
That's fact. I'm not slandering anybody. That's what happened. At that point, I was thinking that that's all we would have would just be these kind of random reenactments. I was feeling pretty depleted and deflated with this Titanic search.
I also went kayaking, and I texted LA because it was an absolute flat calm. I have been kayaking a long time now. I've been kayaking all over Europe and various places. I have not seen water that still, maybe ever. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of this experience. It really was an absolute flat calm. And so predictably, I texted LA a picture of where I was kayaking, and I just texted saying, I don't think I've ever seen such a flat calm. And what I will say, which I really enjoyed probably more than the picture myself, is that I had not Googled the script to type that in because I knew what it was. And what gave me, I'm just searching for it now, what gave me life is that I knew LA hadn't done it either, because she actually sent something back with a slight typo, which was fine, but what it meant was that you knew the line like off by heart without Googling the script. And yeah, so she texted me saying it'll be hard to see the bergs though with no breaking water at the base. But with the slight typo meant that she had not copy and pasted, so I appreciated the authenticity of.
Thank you for understanding that it proves my authenticity, because
No, it does. That I'm. That's what I'm saying is that. So there was that, and there was, other than that, not a whole lot of Titanic really going on. Other than that, I was on water in a boat. I guess I was wearing a life jacket. Well, I mean, I was, but I guess that is kind of related somehow. Actually, I should say I did have a conversation, didn't I? I had a conversation with a Canadian family.
Oh, yeah, you told me that.
And actually, I don't need to tell that story because I realised I recorded the story. So I'll just insert me telling the story on that day, which is very handy. So I went kayaking in the fjords today, and I met this Canadian family. We were just talking about various things, and they asked what I did, and I work in politics, and I just said like the Liberal Party in Canada's turnaround in the last election was extraordinary, but moving a campaign is like moving a tanker ship. Like, it's so hard, and how, you know, you can see it coming, but it's really hard to to make that maneuver. And then I swear to God, hand on heart, the guy turned around and was like, yeah, it's like moving the Titanic. Like, it's just so big, so, you know, it's really hard to do. And I was like, he did it, not me. And I swear to God that I wasn't even looking for it. So does it count? I don't know.
So all of that is led to going to the Maritime Museum. And I think that was like the last full day that we did like a full tour, like a tourism kind of day together. I think we knew that was our best shot and only shot at that point.
Okay, guys, we have found a historic ship register. But is there anything ick? Oh, there's HMS Belfast. Oh, Cutty Sark's kind of a big deal, but no IC. Queen Mary 2. That's pretty cool. Tree. Wait, is that all of them? Oh, look how close that one is. So close.
And we spent a lot of time reading through placards and descriptions of ships from many other eras, and we were sort of losing hope as we were going through. But at the beginning of the museum, there is a great replica cabin of a ship that was definitely, it was like the bridge and the wireless room, and you're seeing footage of it right now, but that definitely gave me, it lifted my spirits, and it definitely was giving Titanic vibes, don't you think? That
gave me some hope. There were a few other kind of adjacent stuff. There was the wheel that we got Lorelei to do some stuff behind.
Hard to starboard. Yeah, this ship's sinking.
And we got her to film, we did some more desperate filming of reenactments, and there was like the bench, and you laid down fake smoking a cigarette, and she runs by as Rose.
There was like a little porthole that had an iceberg in it.
Best clip. I'm so excited for everybody seeing that clip right now, because I know they're seeing it, and you look so adorable with the like the little iceberg in the window. It looks like it would be at a Titanic exhibition.
Yeah, it really does that.
It looks, and you in the video, you just look so happy to have found an iceberg. It's amazing.
Well, again, I thought that that's all we were getting, right? Like,
that was the closest match that we had at that point, was the little iceberg portal, because it sort of looked like the image of the iceberg that people claim was the iceberg that sunk Titanic. Because people claim to have a photo of that actual iceberg. Props to the Maritime Museum there. I can't pronounce the what it is in Norwegian. But they did the lovely exhibit on all sorts of ships that have been relevant to Norwegian history. They're working on a Viking exhibit right now that wasn't open yet, unfortunately, so we couldn't see it. But great museum and lots of artifacts. And I will throw shade at, you know what? I'll go ahead and throw shade at RMS Titanic Inc. right now.
Well, it's been a while.
It's been a while, but when we were
We're back.
at these various museums, Norwegian museums love to actually display their artifacts. They love to pile on artifacts in cases because guess what? Artifacts should be seen. They are properly storing and displaying their artifacts. We noted, on artifacts brought up from shipwrecks in the Maritime Museum and other museums we went to, proper thermometers were placed in cases. So you have a sense of like their stewardship of objects. Beautiful, beautiful. Some places don't bother to do that at all. And also I thought to myself, what a beautiful thing to actually put on display everything that you have. I think there is unfortunately this move in especially America, which is mostly what I can speak to make money off of artifacts and off of objects at museums by pulling out the experience to also include whether it's some sort of hands-on activity, whether it's screens, the idea that one artifact could take up a whole room or 5 artifacts could take up a whole room, and you're charging people to walk through room after room after room, and maybe the number of artifacts you've actually got on display, not too much. And I think these museums are just such a beautiful opposite of that. It's of course everybody should see everything. And a lot of these museums you do have to pay to get into. So they're not, public, but just dozens and dozens of artifacts from shipwrecks in one, case. Beautiful. Why can't RMS Titanic Inc. do that? And we know, why can't they do that? And we know the answer is then you don't make enough money. Or enough money according to how much they want to. You know what I mean? It's all about the money-making process with them. And so I would love to see whole rooms and huge cases of Titanic artifacts where everything is just laid out to tell a story. But none of the artifacts tell a story anymore because they're going to take one bag from one passenger and make a whole room about that one bag because they want your money and they want you going to see other exhibitions, to see other artifacts that they own. And I don't know, this was on my mind a lot, particularly when we were going through the Maritime Museum. They did such a lovely job of bulk displaying artifacts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And they had a fantastic collection of the model boats as well. There was just tons and tons of them on display. One called Britannia.
A little close,
but not.
We definitely knew we were building to something. And then now that I've gone on my diatribe about RMS Titanic Inc., which we wanted one of those in here, right? That's good that we got one. Okay.
I'm just gutted it was you and not me.
The last I checked in America, we do still have this thing called free will and also free speech. I don't know how long we'll have it, but we do have it right now. So those are all my opinion. Those are just my opinion. I feel like from a legal standpoint, I'll say that.
And there's a whole load of kind of ships that are getting, because we're working through the years, right? So this is what's happening is we're getting kind of closer and close. Yeah. And we're like, okay, this is getting close. We see some wreckage from a ship and we're like, okay, this is kind of Titanic vibes. It's kind of...
There was a hull that was damaged.
Very twisted metal and that sort of stuff. And it was, so we're getting very excited about that. And then I said to LA, I'm going to start filming because if we are going to find anything, it's going to be here. And so what you'll see now is me filming basically nothing. And I'm turning around, I'm going around, and then eventually you'll see the thing that makes me laugh so much in this clip is all you'll hear is me go, and then you hear LA's feet go running across. It's
like a little child scurrying.
Because she knows that my exclamation is pointing to something.
It's there!
We found it. Wait, look. We found it. Arguably history's most infamous maritime disaster, portrayed in numerous books, films, and more. That's an understatement. We found it, and it's right near everything about sea rescue. That makes sense. I knew it had to be here.
There we
Yeah,
go.
we did it.
We found...
It's not like an actual model or an artifact or anything like that, but we did find it. So if the question is, can we find like a real Titanic reference in Bergen? Yes.
Well, yeah, because actually the whole section was about safety at sea. And
so relevant to like a lot of the stuff we've been talking about in the What If episodes as well.
Well, yeah, and also I think it does speak to how when people say, "Oh, Titanic, you're into Titanic," isn't that quite niche? Actually, it speaks to how broad Titanic is because, as we all know, I know I've said this a million times, every single law and regulation and drill and the lifeboats and the life jackets and everything, when you get on a cruise ship today, is pretty much directly linked to Titanic. And so that section about safety at sea is proof that Titanic impacted the whole world, and they were acknowledging that there by saying this moment in history prompted a huge wave of changes in safety at sea. So that was, I think, that was actually, even though it feels very small, it's just a little tiny panel that is part of a timeline of safety at sea and how maritime law has changed. It actually speaks to exactly the point, which is, okay, so it's not a huge exhibition with loads of artifacts. It speaks to just how deep Titanic has embedded itself in everything, not just popular culture, not just history, not just maritime law, not just museums, like absolutely everywhere. And so I actually take it as, I would say this because otherwise we have to admit we failed, but I would say that it is a win, that we have proved the point.
I think we've proved its relevance, which is more important, as you're saying, than proving just its existence. That's why you stumbling across the AI generated postcard doesn't really count, because anybody can do that now and prop that in their store, or anybody can sell some AI version of something. But to prove the relevance of the historic moment and find it embedded, that's what we were on the lookout for.
After that moment, I did find a panel about emigration to the United States, and I did find it had all of the routes from Europe to America. And it was quite interesting, actually. It had showed all the different routes and all the different lines, and it did have a number of lines that was like White Star Line. So there was also it showed like the route Southampton onto New York, and like the operating years of White Star Line and things like that. So that was kind of interesting. There was as well that there was like a rescue of another ship as well, which is kind of Titanic vibes, which I'll put in here. But I think we found the one legit.
Yeah, we found what we went looking for. I wish we had time to go down and see the grave markers, just to see them, but we had not hired a car. It was like it was a little bit outside of the city. I do plan to be back in Bergen because I just love Bergen. Bergen's definitely at the top of my list of cities that I've visited and want to return to. It's infinitely walkable. Everybody was really nice. There are just so many beautiful little pockets to explore. Like the footage we have of us jumping into the ocean is just from like a pool that we went to in a neighborhood there that was right on the ocean, and they had this.
Well, it's just a public pool as well. It's just like this was like the council run
equivalent of like 10 American dollars to get in, something like that. I will definitely be back to Bergen. I did lose an earring in Bergen, so I've got to go back and see if I can find it. That's my goal. So I will be back. And whenever I do make it back, or we make it back, because you just go on my family trips now, right? So that's established.
That is what we agreed. I think, isn't it Sweden next?
Sweden next, which we will find, I think we will find, well, there are a lot of Swedish Titanic passengers, so there's gonna be some stuff there, I would imagine. It was just such a fun and entertaining way to think about Titanic in different ways, think about its relevance, but also have fun with it. And I think sometimes people are hesitant to have fun with Titanic, but I don't know. I think that's part of it. It's part of, I mean, in terms of me, like having a podcast, interacting with the whole Titanic world in the way that I do. A lot of us are here for the joy of the communal nature of it, or a lot of us are here for the joy of sharing a love of a thing. I mean, I get like a dozen emails about it a week. And a lot of people who listen to the podcast, this is what they're here for, is to feel a bond with people over this. And so I think it's okay to be lighthearted and joyful about it sometimes, and just embrace that we all love this thing and we want to talk about it. And so despite the woman giving us a weird look at the pool in Bergen, I think it's okay. And I think it's fun to do this. And I will be curious to see if people like this, and if they are, you know, if they want any more content like this from Unsinkable. So definitely like drop a comment or email me or email Pablo. Like we definitely want to hear what you think about this type of YouTube content.
I think the whole experience sums up for me why Titanic works for all ages, because it helps you to engage and access other bits of history and other bits of the world that you otherwise wouldn't. I mean, I would have gone to Norway anyway, but I think that mini mission kind of helped us to see more and push ourselves to, you know, explore in places that perhaps we wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that's...
And to find history that we wouldn't have otherwise. I mean, there's not time to go into every little bit, but in the process of looking for it and looking up the history of whether it was the ships in the harbor or the statues we were coming across, I think when you're looking for something, you find a lot of other things too. And I think that's just another way Titanic always kind of gives back to people who love her, but it's also a reminder that we don't need to be in like a little fishbowl with Titanic. It's a great reminder that Titanic's history should be pulled out from the micro to the macro always, and that's how it stays alive, whether it's in academic history or whether it's just in fun little things like this. Like we have to look for it everywhere, and I think that's kind of how it stays relevant in a weird way, you know.
And it's also like a sort of our way of keeping her story alive, and you know, as you say, keeping her relevance going, is that, you know, in 2025 you can go on a trip to Bergen and still find something Titanic related.
Yeah.
So,
and I think us doing this and filming all of this is just a testament to kind of like the friendship and joy that comes from sharing something that you're passionate about. It's, you know, in America we have, I don't know if it's an expression everywhere, but we just say like, let your nerd flag fly, you know. And I think for me, the older I get, the more I realize, like, if I let my specific nerd flags fly, then people know how to find me. And then it's like having an antenna sticking out from you, and then the right people can find you if you put your antenna out, you know. Like for me, it's Titanic and Outlander and cemeteries and, you know, and weird haunted history, whatever it may be. Like we all have our weird nerd antenna, and we both have Titanic. So we did it.
I think we can safely say we accomplished it. It may have taken a minute and it may have been tangential, but we found Titanic in Bergen, Norway. Not even Norway's #1 city.
I saw one boat with only 3.